We're offering to you first today our first class, and it's a very important topic for anybody newly diagnosed, probably even people who have been diagnosed for a while and still have some outstanding questions. I apologize for the green little bits, but it seems to be annotating everything. Boy, this is, I can see it's going to be one of those days here. So one thing I want to point out, there's a couple of things actually. We're not giving any medical advice in this workshop today. The content of this presentation represents the opinions of our speakers and of other people in Dementia Alliance International. It's not to be considered medical advice. Medical advice should only be obtained through your conversation with your physician. Another thing I want to mention is that we are recording this presentation today. And the intent of that recording is to post it as a public video on YouTube. So if you're using a webcam and you're visible on the screen, if you can see yourself on the screen, chances are you might be videotaped during the presentation. And if you are videotaped, then your picture will show up as part of the public video on YouTube. If you do not wish for your picture to be recorded, turn off your webcam. And the way that you do that, the easiest way is to click on the little camera button. It looks like a little movie camera, and it's in the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom screen. We are using a program called Zoom today, and normally it behaves itself beautifully. I apologize if anybody else is having trouble with it today. A couple of things about Zoom that you should know. First, muting. There may be times where I will try and mute you, or you might want to mute yourself if we hear dogs barking in the background or other unusual noises, because everybody else, if your microphone is on, everybody else can hear what's going on in your house as well. So that might happen. And the other thing is that you can ask questions throughout the presentation using the chat box. The chat box is down on that menu that's down at the bottom of your window. And a couple of people have already been sending messages using that feature. Our panelists today are Sue Stephen from Canada, and she is a Dementia Alliance International board member, and Sid Yodowich, who is from Connecticut in the USA, and he is also a Dementia Alliance International board member. Now, we were going to start with Sue, but she's having trouble getting on to Zoom today. So
yes.
Oh, you're here?
I'm here.
Oh, there she is. Never mind. Back up. Okay, good. Yay. Okay, Sue lives in British Columbia on the west coast of Canada. She's got 2 children, both in their 20s, and her parents were very strong supporters of community life, and Sue is now extending that family love of community life into helping others through sharing her diagnosis of PCA, posterior cortical atrophy. When Sue received her diagnosis, she was very shocked because in 2011, just a mere year before, or 3 months before, her mother, who had Alzheimer's, had just passed away. She had a very difficult time getting diagnosed, so she has a lot of experience to share, and she really had to pursue her diagnosis herself because there's very little understanding of the type of Alzheimer's that she has, the PCA. Sue finally found support in a wonderful Facebook group that's based in London, and she's seen the power of using social media for obtaining direct help and support for those with dementia. So without further ado, I welcome Sue Stephen, and I'm glad that you could join us, Sue.
Thank you.
Sue, just let me know.
I apologize.
Okay.
It took about 30 different clicks to get me here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all learning. I'm learning one of the things that I'm learning to get better at. Well, yeah, welcome to everybody, and our very good topic about, yes, now I've had a diagnosis, now what? It's a very good question. I know with myself, after I was given my initial diagnosis and looking at other people and talking with them, I sort of realized there seemed to be about 3 different responses that people can make or do make. One of them is, I call it hide and seek. I'm just going to run away and hide. I don't want to hear any more about this. I don't know anything about it. I don't want to, there's a stigma that I don't want anywhere near me. I'm just going to disappear. I think a second one would be the second one would be, why me? And I really had that, particularly as Laura had said, my mom had just passed away. Now, why me? This isn't anything to me. And I was very angry, and I think that's a very angry response. And another one, a third one, is relief, because some people have been running around trying to get people to pay attention to the fact that they have problems. And the diagnosis actually brings them feeling to some relief. But it's certainly a time of unsettlement and unsure and high emotion and turmoil. I think I've been through all of them, and I'm sure many of us who had diagnosed have been through those feelings at different times. The one thing I would say about that is I've seen it in some places, maybe with friends, maybe with care, but there's a push to kind of pull away from those so-called negative kinds of feelings and that. And I myself don't believe that. I think you need to work through it. It's a big decision, and you've been, told, and it's a big surprise to everybody. So I think the first decision that you need to make on your journey is to say, I'm going to stay this way until I feel better. I know that for me, I didn't tell anybody about the disease. I did not, even my children or anyone. I didn't want to talk about it. And then what I did was I did a lot of research. And when I was feeling really bad, I'd just put on my running shoes and go out for a run. I did a lot of running during that period. But when you're ready, when you feel it, and you are ready to kind of begin looking around, I would say the next thing that I did and was the most useful is to learn about what I had, because nobody around me knew much about it. And so I did a lot of research. And I think it's really important to the kinds of questions that start and decisions start very quickly, that you go and ask your questions. Ask all the questions you want and spend as much time as you need to come to understand something that has just happened to you and what some of the information is. There's lots of information, lots of really good information around online, and Alzheimer's, of course, put out a lot of information, and there's a lot on our site. So that's the first thing that I would suggest. For me, it was really important because nobody knew what I had. In fact, the diagnosis I thought I got, and that's quite often, I didn't accept. They thought that I had Alzheimer's, and I thought I had this PCA. And I was able, with a lot of research, to prove that yes, that was indeed not what I had. So don't be pushed in any way into decisions until you're ready. Another one that I often get from people is, should I take Aricept? I don't know, because it's pushed at everybody pretty much, some kind of drug right away. Again, I think it's important that you understand that you make the decision whether or not you want to try it. My reaction was, I've never taken pills in my life. Why would I take it now? I don't know anything about it. So I got a little more information, and someone did finally sort of put the idea to me that it was my decision, and if I wanted to try it, I could do it. If I didn't like it, I could stop it. And at that point, I realized, yeah, okay, I don't be pushed into making any decisions like that. Then I think what happens if you are really well-grounded and you've had your answers made, what happens is that you're a little more easy about talking about it and looking to some of the decisions that people are asking. At that point, I think it's time to kind of, what I did was step out, and what I heard and picked up as something that I would do is to build a foundation, build some teams that could help me in areas that I might need help. And so obviously the first sort of team that you might look to is your family. And I know mine has been terrific. And whenever things have got bad or I've been feeling, they've been there for me. And that helped knowing that that was the point at which I told my children, for instance, what I had. And the response was really neat for all of us, I think. Sad, but neat. The next kind of, I think, team that I would put together was a medical team, because what I found was there's just the medical system. It's such it's all chopped up, and it isn't connected, and all the different doctors and nurses and medical things that suddenly come around. And so with the information that I had about the disease that I had, I was able to go around, and it means not just there's your GP, of course, there's your main one, but neurologists, there's dentists, there's physios, there's all kinds of people, and for all of them, I was able to take some information, the same information, and try and bring them together. And I think we're having a whole discussion in this just on medical, and I think that's really important. The other one is friends. Yes, some friends do drop away. I found friends. I had been retired, and I found a lot of friends at work kind of disappeared. But the friends the long friends, the good friends, the ones I call the golden friends, stayed with me. And what I did was just take a walk with a friend that I knew might stay with me, and explain, not in a whole lot of detail, but what was happening and how I was. And those friends have stayed, and they have just been amazing all the way through, and I know will continue to support me in all kinds of things. And as I say, I call them my golden friends. I had another one would be sort of help and support with general health and well-being. And in my case, I have a wonderful group of 5 women who we all run together, and they have stayed with me too and kept me running. And I think if I had not built that twice a week regular with those people, and I probably might have, not done as much exercise as I have. I've also done Tai Chi, and the people there are really open to all kinds of issues, and helping you with it. And they don't, there's no, with these people, there's no stigma. They're just friends as they've been all friends, or helping you as they've all been helping with me. Yeah, so I think as these, you build these teams, there's obviously one, two, that I think is very important, and that's the team of all of us who have disease, who meet and talk and chat and exchange information. And that started with the people in London, but it's spread out over the world. And that kind of help, and knowing that that's behind you, it really helps me to feel confident and to step out and do things. And I think once that you have that confidence, it's time that you can go back and look at the time of your diagnosis and say, in that time, you probably had a bucket of things that you were waiting to do, you were just retired or whatever that you wanted to do with the rest of your life, and you sort of left that behind. At least that's what I did. I thought, well, I can't do any of those things now. And it's not true. But with these things behind me, I realized, yes, I can do some of these things. And I am going to do some of these things. I'm not going to be left behind on those things. And at that point, I think, for instance, for me, a good example was travel, because I always wanted to do a lot of travel now that I was retired. And I thought, well, I can't travel. And in fact, a lot of people tell you that you can't travel. It's not true. And one of the things that was just great, our oldest friends, first of all, we took a trip with the with two couples. And so we were a group, and we went on a trip up the island here. And then after, with another group of friends, we did the same thing and went all the way down the west coast of Oregon and into San Francisco. And these are things that I was nervous about, traveling and how would I be and all that. And it was fine. It was great. And then reaching out a little more, my daughter and I in November went to Cambodia and Vietnam on a trip. And again on that trip, I told the leader of that trip, just not in great detail, but some of the issues, and those people too. It was incredible. I made it to the top of Angkor Wat, which was my goal, and it was wonderful. But I wouldn't been able to do any of these things, I know, just on my own or what. It was the support that a whole lot of other people gave. We all had a lot of them. So I think that as far as doing what you want to do, once you gain that confidence and have that support behind you, you realize this is your journey. It's yours to make. It's yours to choose what you want to do. And it is possible to do these things. And you don't need to listen to people who tell you that you can't do them. I guess for me, going forward, I'll continue my latest one that I have been working on, my latest team. That one of the members just came up to help me, and that's trying to be able to work a lot better online. It's pretty different from the time when I was working, and I have to learn a lot about that. And I've had people say to me, "Oh, you can't learn anymore." I don't believe that at all. I am learning, maybe slower, I may have to grab my son every so often, but I will learn how to learn. And I think that's kind of the attitude that you need to have. So in sort of summary, what I would say is once you give yourself time to gain confidence, and don't be pushed into any kind of decisions that you don't want to make. You can always wait. We are going to be around for a while, and go for what you want to do. I have a very close friend of mine, and he loves to remind us again and again. This is Cecil's words, that you can do things that you want to do. You may just have to do them differently, a little bit differently. And that's good. And I guess it's your journey. Make it what you want, and have as rich an experience as you can. And as I've said, and I found, some of the best support by a mile is talking and dealing with each other. And because when you're in a group, a support group of people who are going through what you're going through, you know they understand. And I think that's important. So go for it. That's my thank you.
Laura, your mic is muted.
Okay, so now I know unmute all does not include unmuting me. So I'll try that again. Thank you very much, Sue. We're just going to take a couple of minutes here, and if anybody has any questions to ask Sue, we'll take a few minutes now. We will have a general question and answer after Sid's presentation as well. So if you have any questions, I've unmuted everybody, or so you can speak out your question, or you can use the group chat box. So does anybody have any questions to ask Sue? Sue, I was wondering if you could describe briefly your experience of PCA, and what PCA is, and how you experience Alzheimer's in particular.
Oh, the particular way it's the differences, you mean?
Yeah, it's the way that it's affected you, so people could kind of understand where you're coming from.
Okay. Yeah. It is a rare form of the dementia. There's arguments whether or not it's part of Alzheimer's or not. It really, those arguments. But what it is a very different presentation, in that Alzheimer's will go automatically to memory, and for their testing, for how they do it. And it has generally been a lot of older people. With PCA, it's visual, it's very different. It's there's no issues, sometimes right through to the end, no issues around memory, or maybe even being aware of what's around. But it can include a lot of visual things, which include it's a blindness, but it's a blindness that's not, that even the eye people don't understand. It's not enough. You've got a perfectly good eye system working, but you've got problems with the brain, and of course the brain is really the thing that decides what it is that you're looking at. So what happens is you start looking, your visual problems are because you can't see what the right thing is. So you might be sitting and you can't see something that's right in front of you. You have trouble with glare. You have a lot of trouble with dark. And as it goes on, things like where there's a big black hole, and if you were walking along, you might think it's a hole and it's not. It's okay, but you have to go around it. So there's all kinds of different visual things that visual does, but it's not memory. And it's also generally diagnosed around in the late 50s to early 60s, which means that people are often at the height of their careers and bang. So it has quite different, and it's really hard to get across to people because all they have in their mind is this picture of a person with Alzheimer's who can't remember anything and is elderly. So that's the issues. I had to pay a lot of attention. I still do to that they understand what I need from them in the medical.
Right. Okay.
And that's why I myself pretty don't let people press you into the diagnosis if it doesn't feel right. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel at what I'd seen with my mother, which was classic Alzheimer's. You really will have to. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Sue. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to Sid? Amy, Sue, there's a question from Amy who says, thank you, Sue. Do you think your positive attitude before you were diagnosed has helped you be more positive now?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think it was, but it was a sure shock for me. I mean, I wasn't, and I did my raging for sure. I think what it's done is make me fight back more. Yeah, fight back more for myself and speak out more for myself. But yes, I did have some, it's good, gives you confidence.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Amy says that I think that people with coping skills before diagnosis have more to draw on.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a good point. That's probably a good point.
Yeah. I'm really aware of that now because I do a lot of looking ahead from where my space is now, which is through, earlier, it's 2.5 years. I want those friends to be there and things like that to continue. So that takes some work now even to keep, but keep going.
Okay, thank you, Sue. If you do have questions from Sue or from Sid, we'll take them at the end of Sid's presentation, and I'm just going to introduce Sid now. Sid, you want to wave? Let everybody know who you are. Okay. Sid lives in Connecticut. He has 2 children, twin boys, right? Is it? Yeah.
Yes, and a daughter.
Yeah. Oh, and a daughter. Okay, 3 children. He worked for over 25 years with Travelers Insurance, and he retired from his job as a project manager in information technology. And he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2011, but it took him more than 4 years to get his diagnosis. After his diagnosis, he got involved with the Alzheimer's Association in Connecticut, and he's speaking to groups about living with the disease. About the idea of talking about how you live with the disease, Sid says, is a new focus for the association, which has long offered courses and support for people who take care of loved ones with Alzheimer's, but only recently now they're focusing more on efforts to give those with the disease a voice too, and Sid has been an active part of that. And in July of 2013, Sid was appointed to the State of Connecticut Task Force, which is developing a state plan on Alzheimer's and dementia. Sid is also a Dementia Alliance International board member. And I should point out also that both Sid and Sue spoke at the recent Alzheimer's Disease International conference that was held in May 2014 in Puerto Rico. So Sid, without further ado, we've got your slide up. Okay.
Well, what I want to talk about is what happened before I got a diagnosis. I was in IT for 30 years, and I was working as a designer for a major project in the corporation. I'd go to a lot of meetings, and I would leave the meeting and remember what was going on. I looked at my notes, and I just couldn't put together the notes. I was having a lot of problems. This went on for almost a year. It got to the point where I couldn't do anything anymore, and I took a medical leave of absence. At that point, I went on to short-term disability and had to deal with the disability people. Now, anyone who's been on short-term or long-term disability experiences a very vigorous action by that company to get you back to work, and they are constantly sending you paperwork to fill out the paperwork, and that's not enough information. So between the fact that I had left work and was dealing with children that were still in the house, it was quite overwhelming. I almost gave up, but I did have an elder lawyer, and she told me that it is going to be very difficult. They'll try any trick in the book, and they're experienced at it to get you off of disability. So she said, you have to be tough. You have to really fight for yourself. And that's when everything just started to turn around, because I didn't really have a network set up. I didn't know what was going on. And in the beginning, you really have to take a stand and stick with it. You really have to advocate for yourself. I was telling people that I didn't know what was happening with me. I feel like my brain is broken because I just didn't understand what was going on. So the disability insurance was an ongoing thing, and then I went on long-term disability. I had to go to doctors and a lot of different doctors. It was very difficult to get a diagnosis. After the diagnosis, actually the doctor told me to stay involved, and he also gave me some medication. And the medication, after it was properly adjusted, really helped a lot. And I was able to think a little clearer. And I started planning for the rest of my life. The first thing I did was I was determined to get out of the house and do something at least once a day. I was still driving, and I'm still driving now. And I thought it was really important. I've done a lot of research. There's a lot of information on the internet, and I felt that it was really important to stay involved and plan ahead. Sometimes it's just very difficult to get up in the morning and plan the day out. What I used to do was, if I didn't have anything to do, was just go to the dog park and talk to the people there. that was very easy, and I really enjoyed it. So did the dog. I also had to get involved. I contacted the Alzheimer's Association, and they had a support group for people with dementia. So I went to that. I got some really good information. There was a couple there that had emailed all their friends. They said they sent out about 50 emails and about the wife having Alzheimer's. And they said that was a really big mistake. Most of my friends had really dropped off. And I learned a lot by that you have to ease into telling people about your dementia. When most people meet me, they think I don't have any type of dementia. But after we get to know each other, and then I show that I'm a lucid person and able to do a lot of things, that really comforts them. And then I can tell them all the activities that I do and talk a little about dementia. Also, through the Alzheimer's Association, I was pointed towards a brain training course. And this was a 3-month course that was given by the New England Cognitive Center, and specifically designed for the different stages of dementia. And first of all, it benefited my memory, because I was really having problems with memory. And they taught me some tricks on how to remember things. And I still use those every single day. Also, spatial relationships. I had trouble drawing circles and squares and figuring out angles and things like that. So they had some exercises that addressed that. Also, focus, which was really important. They had some fabulous exercises that as they went along, increased the period of your focus. That helped me a lot in driving and just everyday living. Also, reaction time. They had exercises on reaction time. And this is not a generally available course. The state of Connecticut funded it. But I really do believe in cognitive training. I think people that are living with the disease and can remember things and live a much better life if they choose one of the different options that are available in each of the courses. Then I started talking Alzheimer's talks. It's really important for me to communicate. One of the things that I had read on the internet, that communication is one of the things that you do first. And when I had trained as a professional speaker, when I retired, I thought I would do some speaking, and words meant a lot to me. So I started speaking at the Alzheimer's walks, and one year I did 5 walks, and the biggest walk has 3,000 people. And for a person who wants to do public speaking, that's a real big thrill. I also became an ambassador to my state senator, so I got involved in public policy. And then I served on a state task force to set up a plan for the state of Connecticut to deal with Alzheimer's and dementia in the years ahead, specifically pointing to do legislation that be passed. Also, I did a international town hall at Pfizer Pharmaceutical on Alzheimer's. And I also spoke, as Laura said, at Alzheimer's Disease International World Conference in Puerto Rico. And I did that with Richard Taylor. The point I'd like to make is you really have to try and communicate and advocate for yourself, because people, well, it's important for people to really understand what you want. And if you don't push issues, other people are going to decide for you, and while you still can, you should be really advocating for yourself. Now, on a daily basis, I do a lot of planning. I actually live by my calendar, and I try to do as many things as possible to two in-person support groups. One support group, I'm actually the youngest person. I'm 63 now, and most of the people are over 70. And the dynamics of that group is much different from the other group that I go to, which most of the people are actually younger than I am. There's 12 of us, and I think there's 3 of us that are over 60. So you have people who were diagnosed after retirement, and on the other hand, you have a group that was working as I did, had children, so that the issues are very different. I find that very interesting. I also attend a weekly online support through the Dementia Alliance, and I find that really important because staying connected is really important. And I find that there's a real irony about living well with Alzheimer's, because most of the dementia professionals say you don't look or act like you have Alzheimer's. What I would like them to say is, how do you do what you do? You know, most Alzheimer's professionals are real status quo thinkers, and they really lack curiosity. They feel very comfortable with what you see in the media, and that kind of upsets me because what you see is a person usually in a nursing facility or in a wheelchair. They're kind of slumped over, and they're non-responsive. I think it's really important that people who are in the early stages of the disease get connected, stay involved, and do as much as they possibly can. So in conclusion, I'd like to say, you're your best advocate. It's really important that you really think about how you want to express your needs and what you want to do. Because you don't want other people, especially in the earlier stages, to make decisions for yourself. When I was first diagnosed, everything I read was, well, after diagnosis, most people live 3 to 5 years. I find that might be true if you're like 75 or 80 years old, but if you're in your 50s or 60s, there's a good chance that you might be living with this disease for 20 years. So it's really important to think ahead and plan. Stay involved. Don't put back. Do as much as you possibly can. So get out of the house. Don't stay sequestered at home. If you have disabilities and you can't get out of the house, you can't drive, there are a lot of opportunities online. And if you connect with Dementia Alliance International, we'll get you into a support group. and get you a lot of information. It's so important that people that have this disease travel the road together. It makes it much easier, and you get a lot of good information and a lot of support, because we understand what's going on. I mean, a person who has dementia really relate to another person who has dementia. It seems that it's across all dimensions. So, at this point, I think we'll open this up for questions. Laura, do you want to take over?
Okay, and I'm just going to unmute everybody as well, so that if somebody would like to ask a question verbally, they can. I just want to do one more slide here, and this is a slide on behalf of Kate Swaffer. Kate Swaffer is another Dementia Alliance International board member, but she lives in Australia, where it's about 2:30 in the morning right now, so she's fast asleep and couldn't participate today. But she wanted to send a message to the participants today that you should not accept the prescribed disengagement. She coined the term prescribed disengagement given to you upon diagnosis. So what does that mean? Prescribed disengagement is the prescription of disengagement from a person's pre-dementia diagnosis, from your life pre-diagnosis. And this is a diagnosis that is often given by most healthcare professionals at the point of diagnosis or shortly thereafter. Kate, following a diagnosis of younger onset dementia at the age of 49, was advised to give up work, give up her studies, and go home to live for the time she had left, whatever that meant, after she had been advised to give up everything you like doing. What is it to live if you've just been told to give up everything? She quickly termed this sort of whole attitude prescribed disengagement. And it was and is at odds with what is a positive and meaningfully engaged life. So when you're trying to think of living well with a disease, you don't start to think, well, I need to give up everything. The medical model of care of prescribed disengagement supports and exacerbates social inequality, stigma, isolation, loss of identity, and discrimination. It also has the potential to set up the person with dementia to become a victim or sufferer, and their family caregivers to become martyrs. What's the cost of prescribed disengagement? Kate says that prescribed disengagement has significant negative emotional, financial, and social costs and impacts the person with dementia, their families, and impacts severely on a person's quality of life and well-being. It disempowers, devalues, demeans, and lowers self-esteem, and increases isolation, loss of identity, lost employment, and therefore reduces income, increases health and travel costs, and very negatively impacts well-being and quality of living. Kate says, do not give up living and fight for your life in the same way as you would be advised to if you had been diagnosed with any other terminal illness or disease. So I think that Sid and Sue are anything but people who follow the prescribed disengagement diagnosis or prescription after diagnosis. Okay, thank you, Peter, for joining us today. Peter, did you have any questions before you leave?
No, I don't. Thank you. Appreciate the time and the programming.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Peter.
Bye.
Now, Amy has commented that the issue of age or stage of life at diagnosis is huge for me. I was 50 when I was aware that I had problems. I was not ready to even think about a bucket list. My husband will be working for many years. My kids were in college. I'm not saying I had it harder, just different. So Sue has talked about, and Sid was able to retire, and Sue had already retired, and they were ready they were looking forward to retirement with their whole bucket list. And Amy was diagnosed much earlier, so she wasn't even thinking about a bucket list yet. So there's a bit of a juxtaposition Sid or Stu, how do you manage that when the diagnosis is earlier in life, or maybe somebody else has a comment on that?
The one thing I've heard or seen is that socially it may be more difficult because, as you said, there's a lot of social activity in younger people, right? Mm-hmm. The younger, and some of those people may be less likely to be around, or or they may be very busy themselves. I don't know, but I think I know in some places in Vancouver, for instance, they have put in some places where they can meet on their own within a younger age, and I think Australia is doing some work on for later stage, but younger people. I think that the needs are different. I'm sure they can. I think underneath it, they need to learn about all the things apply, but it's a different environment. And I know that even people with dementia, in PCA, if you're going into a place to be placed somewhere in here, and you're likely to be maybe late 50s, you're going to be in with a lot of people in their 80s. So I think these are issues that really need attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any comments or questions? Jasmina says, what sort of brain training would you recommend in early stage dementia? Sid, maybe you can respond to that question. What brain training would you recommend in early stage dementia?
I found what was really helpful was were some memory exercises. I took an executive function test almost a year ago. I actually scored very high on it. But they actually, it's like training for a college entrance exam. So they go over all the executive function exercises, and they actually train you to do that. By doing that, you figure out which type of skills that you really need to remember. There's a exercise called chunking, which put things together. The executive function test, they usually have 20 words you have to remember, and they might have like a category of vehicles. So you could have a motorcycle, a car, a truck, things like that. So as they say them, put them together, then there might be another category of farm animals, a cow, a horse, a goat, sheep, and stuff like that. So you break them down into chunks. That makes it a lot easier to remember things. I do a lot of visualization also. When I remember, I try to use all of my senses. I try to visualize. I try to remember the words, like that. And I like to do like memory cues. What I found was really helpful was some of the spatial things, because I'm a real do-it-yourselfer, and at that point, it's very difficult for me to even use a screwdriver. And so they had exercises of how to retrain your brain so that you can get those angles, straight lines, and things like that. So I found that very helpful. I think the focus was most important, because if you can't focus, you really can't function. And your cognition is really pretty poor. And I've been in situations where I've been alone, and especially in the subways of Washington at Union Station, where people are running to the next train, and there's just so much commotion. and I kind of revert back to some of the and just focus and get on the right train type of thing. I'm sure everyone's experienced that. Instead of panicking or being stressed for it, I just realized that, it would pass and get back into focus. It's almost a somatic type of feeling that I bring up. I just calm my body down. I've always been a person who when things get really hairy and I just get quiet. When I was in IT, systems would go down and people would be rushing around trying to figure out what was happening. I was always the calmest person in the world, the calmest person in the room. And I always found that worked for me. That's something that I carry forward. So.
One of the most all-round ones that I have found, and it's my rooting when I'm coming apart, is Tai Chi, because it has everything. It has movement in space, right, left. It has 104, 48 or whatever it is, movements that you make. You really have to focus. And it's a walking meditation in that sense. And it has a lot of balance in it. It was done by people thousands of years ago, I guess, and it's lasted a long time. And it's very, they have exercises that really push the brain, the blood through the brain to coming up and down. So that's where I go when I feel everything falling apart. I found it really good.
Okay. Sue, how do you, if somebody's never been involved in Tai Chi, how do they get involved?
I'm sure in just about anywhere there is some kind of Tai Chi happening. There's an international one that I belong to that's actually based in Canada and all over the world. And so you just have to put in Taoist Tai Chi on a search, and you would get a lot of things. Another one I would say, because I can only work so much on a computer, so doing the computer ones, I have limits. But another one is music, and I'm doing the African, as I said, because I can't do the visual anymore, tracking the little black thing. I do African drumming, and it's very good for sound. It's very good for right, left, right, all those things too. Any of those holistic things that can do physical and brain teaching, I think, are great.
Okay. Sid, where did you access your brain training from? What organization? How did you find it?
I was looking at the Alzheimer's Association calendar, and I saw that there was a presentation by the New England Cognitive Center, and I went to that presentation, and I was able to sign up for the course. There again, I was the youngest person by far. This was given at an assisted living facility. So the people ranged basically from the early 70s to mid 80s, and they were all residents. So I was a non-resident, and I was a young guy. I believe 59 at the time. But it was hard keeping up with these people. I mean, the head of the class was 85. He was phenomenal. They could see that I was having a lot of problems. And in the beginning, it really demonstrated what my problems were, because the exercises were really simple. Then by the end of the course, after the 3 months, there was a significant change. I really practiced the different exercises, and it made a real big difference in my life. But this is not. It's too bad that this isn't more generally available. It's very expensive to take it. You know, you have to pay for it. And the really isn't. I mean, we're doing a lot of research, but very, very rarely hear about brain training. What you hear is it's going to get worse. But you know, as I had stated before, if you're in the early stages and you're a younger person, you might be looking at 20 years, and a lot of those years are going to be active. So you really have to think about how I'm going to live my life and how I want to live my life. I did that really, really early on, and it made a big difference because it's been like 3.5 years since I took all that training, and I revert back to it all the time, and it's really helped me a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts on the idea of retraining your brain? It's really quite controversial, I think, because usually the idea is with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia that there is no rehabilitation, unlike, let's say, somebody who has a stroke, which is vascular dementia. But when the focus is on a stroke, usually there is some sort of rehabilitation attached, but not for Alzheimer's or dementia. So that's really interesting, Sid.
Well, I would like to point out that, you know, after I was diagnosed, and it was put on Aricept and Namenda, and medication were adjusted properly, all of a sudden I had a lot better cognition. I remembered what had to be done, and I didn't remember how to do it. So little by little, I had to retrain myself. You know, I mentioned that at one point I couldn't even use a screwdriver, a very elemental tool. So little by little, I started using my tools and really think about what I was doing. So I got that brain connection between my physical movements and my thinking. But it was like 6 to 9 months of really intensive retraining myself because it was almost a second chance. But see, what's different with me is the medication has really worked, and a lot of other people either have problems with the medication or they don't work at all. But I'm kind of an anomaly, and the doctors really scratched their head. But you know, I did test myself. I went off the medication for a while, and I was worse than the pre-diagnosis. Because my wife had said to me, she says, "Well, you're doing pretty good. You really need the medication." I went off it for a little while, and definitely I question medication help. I'm an advocate for trying the medication. If it doesn't work, don't use it.
Right. Again, if anybody has any questions, please use the chat box, or you can speak out your question too. We have a smaller group now because we went past the top of the hour, so some people had to go. So we only have 15 people in the room right now. So if you want to ask your question, you can verbally ask it. So I have no end of questions, as per usual. Both of you have been very strong advocates for yourself, but a lot of people report apathy. And did either one of you run into apathy and on the part of yourself? And if so, how did you manage to get past that?
like I said before, I would plan ahead. I'm a real planner, and I would plan at least one activity a day, so that I would get out of the house and I would stay engaged. I think that was really important for me, because everybody says, well, you know, and actually a lot of societies hide people that have dementia. So I thought it was important for me to do the opposite. What I actually did was the Alzheimer's Association has a chart of 10 signs of dementia, and I sat down with that chart, and I derived a plan to counteract each of the signs. It got to the point where I was so specific that I didn't want to look like I was disengaged. So I actually looked in the mirror and saw what my facial expressions were, and I made sure that I was very positive and relaxed. So I think that's really important, the planning aspect of dementia.
Mm-hmm. Sue, did you have any kind of apathy that you had to try and get over?
Oh, of course. I'm not, you know, I think the issue is to look at, yeah, it happens. I get depressed. I mean, especially over things sometimes when, like, I can't read, I can't curl up and read. And, you know, people say, well, yes, you can do the reading, you know, you can have that but orally and that, but it's not the same. And that's been a big thing in my life, and it doesn't just come away and I'm happy about it or anything. So when I sort of find those kinds of things or have those kinds of days, I just let them happen. It will be a day that is slow. And I usually, my thing is either to go to Tai Chi right away or to go for a walk. That's just how I handle those kinds of days.
Okay. Pamela, one of our participants, made the comment, doctors said to a friend with PCA, go home and enjoy the rest of your life. So this is the prescribed disengagement that Kate had me read out. The only suggestion was to change your tub to a shower and to take medication. It would have been helpful if the doctor had a social worker or someone the diagnosed person could have met with shortly after diagnosis. Yes, that's very true. So with Dementia Alliance International, we do have online support groups. We're starting sort of at the top, and our intention is to work regionally so that eventually we can have somebody in each region with dementia that other people who are newly diagnosed can meet with. There's also another organization, well, online, if somebody wants immediate support and they're okay with talking to other people, they can join an online support group of people with dementia, and it's only people with dementia. There are no caregivers. And that's why we also offer these master classes, so that people who might not usually have the opportunity to speak with somebody with dementia would have the opportunity to hear from somebody who's struggling with similar issues to themselves. There's also another online organization called Dementia Mentors, where a person with dementia can be paired up with somebody who's diagnosed, and they can meet online, from what I understand. So there are increasing opportunities to do that. I think that ideally, as I said, Dementia Alliance International would like to be able to get to the point where we can have people in each region who will meet person to person live with somebody with dementia, because I think we all think that a person who's newly diagnosed needs to have that inspiration to see that there's somebody else who has similar challenges and is getting through it. So yeah, thank you, Pam. That's a great comment. Thank you, Pamela. Any other comments or questions before we wrap up here?
Well, I think that it has been really important that I've done a lot of public speaking and made my dementia public, because I really wanted to change the face on dementia. What you see in the media is the later stages, and it's really important that people understand that in the earlier stages, there's still a lot of life to live. And there's a lot of things that can be done. And people with dementia do have feelings, do have thoughts, and do have needs. So that is one of the biggest things that I've done. When people come to support groups, especially my younger early onset group, they come in with the stigmas that society has attached to them, and they've had the Kool-Aid of, go home and go see a lawyer, go home and die, basically. And they don't realize that there's a lot of life to live, and they're so enthusiastic and so joyful after they come to the group to see that other people are living well with dementia. So I think as my last comment is to really stay connected, seek out a support group, if in person or get connected online. There's also Dementia Alliance also has a Facebook page for people with just dementia, which I've found very informative. I've met people all over the world through that, and that is very exciting. So stay connected.
Right. Thanks, Sid, for mentioning that. Jasmina has another question as well, but before we get on to that, I wanted to say that with your support groups, there are some Alzheimer's Association or Alzheimer's Society chapters that offer support groups specifically for people with dementia. Some people have more success with those groups than others. Some groups are very much focused on doing crafts and little memory quizzes and not talking. They don't want to talk about the issues. Other groups talk about daily life and supporting each other and coping strategies and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of group I would recommend. It's totally up to you. Speaking on behalf of Sue, and Sue, you can chime in anytime. Sue did go to her support group of people with dementia where she lives. It was the Let's All Do Crafts kind of support group, and she actually changed that into one that is now talking about the real issues and providing real support. So kudos to
it wasn't just me. No, it was just the way the questions I asked, I guess.
Oh, so you asked, so you changed it by asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Got people talking. Yeah, good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Jasmina asks, any suggestions regarding food?
Mm.
Well, the advice that I got from my doctor was that if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. So you could choose your own diet that's heart healthy.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I guess our expert that we saw was was one of the top people here. She did a webinar here, mm-hmm. and her recommendation was to the Mediterranean, which is hardly ever any red meat. Lots of fish and lots of chicken and lots and lots of vegetables and fruit. However you can. If you can't afford a gun, it just doesn't matter. Get those. And I think her webinar is available there. Right?
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to type in the name. So it's Dr. Carol Greenwood, and she's with Baycrest in Toronto. And she was a co-author of a cookbook called Mindful Eating. I think it's called A Diet for Better Brain Health, but it's Mindful Eating, Dr. Carol Greenwood. And I don't have the YouTube channel right offhand, but if you go to the A Meeting of the Minds YouTube channel, and the link to that is in the emails that I send out every so often about upcoming events, and soon there will be an email that comes out about this event being posted to YouTube. So there'll be another link on there that'll have the link to all the A Meeting of the Mind webinars, and she was a guest earlier this year, and she talked about that, and her focus, the focus of their research was on the Mediterranean diet, which, as Sid says, is if you eat well for your heart, you're eating well for your brain as well. So that was basically her thesis as well. And Amy says, just eat cupcakes. And she mindfully eats cupcakes. I agree. Okay, we have another question. Would any of you agree that screening for early signs would have been helpful to you? Would you have participated, and would it have helped you to get some indication this was coming earlier than it did?
Yes, excellent question. I have two thoughts about that. One of the things is that when we've all looked back and talked to each other about, we can, most of us, especially in PCA, where it doesn't get diagnosed, people realize that actually it had started quite a bit before it was diagnosed. My quandary is they seem to want to do getting a lot earlier, but that is mainly to get research, and it's not so much to with all the stigma still here and all the thing. You wonder what happens if you start having teenagers told that they have these things, or you discover them. Is it good or not? I think it's a good question. I'm very I go back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think an early diagnosis is in the early stage, if that's when you're diagnosed. I mean, a lot of people get diagnosed as moderate to severe stages, because that's a lot easier for doctors. It's really evident that you're having trouble, that you're having trouble, and it's a lot more skillful for the physician to diagnose you early. When I was on the state task force, I was pushing early diagnosis, and the doctors there were saying, well, it doesn't do you any good. But their experience, then again, they were dealing with older people, probably 75 and above. And for a younger, and I kept on stressing, for a younger person, that's really important, so that they can do a lot of planning and plan to live. So I think an early diagnosis, I think that, you know, if if you say to your doctor you're having memory problems, they should be going forward with testing, and they should put it in your record. I saw the doctor 6 months before I left my employment, and I told him I was having a lot of memory problems. And then when I saw him when I left my employment, I asked him if he had that in his notes, and he said he hadn't. So I think that's really important, that the doctor really does kind of a workup if you have memory problems. This is something that's really overlooked in early examinations.
If it's doing, I would sure hope that it wouldn't be run by the chemical companies, because they know where their market is.
Oh, the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as long as it's not driven by the pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
It also puts people in an awkward spot, I think, if they are diagnosis. It's a bit of a balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
If I think what I heard Sid say was that when he went to his employers and said, "I'm having problems with my memory," it was also noted in his doctor's records, which I'm assuming then helped you to meet the requirements for your disability. And people who don't have that kind of insurance, if they do get diagnosed early, they might lose their job because of the stigmas attached to dementia, even though it's not necessarily an issue that's impacting your work at this moment, or that with some minor adjustments to how you do your work, that you could still be gainfully employed.
If I look
the stigma
back,
right now is you have dementia, you're fired in a lot of places. So
if I look back, I had my beginnings of mine when I was still working, but I was perfectly capable of working. I worked another probably 3 years and had a great, doing a lot of work at a high level, and I was coping fine, traveling, doing, if I'd gone in and done some tests, they probably would have told me I had something.
mm-hmm.
But I was fine, and then I was able to stay till 60, and that made a big difference too to the pension. But you're right.
Right.
But I was perfectly capable. So.
Mm-hmm. Feltec. So this participant asked the question about early diagnosis and makes the comment that the finger study, what does finger stand for? The finger study shows there are lifestyle changes that would be helpful at any stage. If this was widely known, that there is something people can do to exercise some control over their future, so you think more people, including doctors, would be more open to early diagnosis? It's a study from Finland that was a big topic at AAIC, the finger study. So that with lifestyle changes, they are helpful to people at any stage of the disease. So if this was widely known, I think we have to go a long way personally towards combating the stigma, that there's a lot of education that needs to take place in society as to the abilities of people with dementia. And if dementia is treated as a disability in our North American society, and so that accommodations are made to people with the various disabilities, and that there's a better understanding of the disabilities that are caused by various forms of dementia, that it's not just memory and it's not just executive functions, that it could be something else very specific that with some accommodations is not going to impact that person's lifestyle. Yeah, maybe, but I think it's going to take a big change in our society. I don't know. What do you think, Sid and Sue?
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's a bit scary to me now because of what I think that the idea is right, but I want to see how it's going to be carried out.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the dementia-friendly communities movement? This is my last question. That's okay. You can ask more questions. What do you think of the dementia-friendly communities movement?
I think they're really good. I think they're actually really great to keep people engaged. I really think that the longer people are engaged in our social, I think the better the outcome. So instead of having people in groups, have them have a lifestyle. So I think it's really important that people stimulate the brain. I think social interaction, at least for me, keeps me very active. As opposed to not being interactive. I had a heads down job. I was chained to a computer 8 hours a day. So most of my career was communicating with a computer. Now I still have some of my computer skills, but I find social engagement as the best medicine for me. And that really keeps me going. And I look forward to meeting people and talking to people and staying active, reading the news, just things that a normal person would do. So I find that very good.
Mm-hmm. Sue, any comment about dementia-friendly communities?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah. We can see in the UK a lot that they're doing with that. And I think it's a way of getting rid of the stigma. That's what it is. And yeah, I don't know a lot about them, but.
Yeah, well, they take different forms, I think, in different countries, but it does, trying to create a dementia-friendly community does do away with, helps with doing away with some of the stigma and gaining acceptance in the community, and therefore building accommodations for people. So in England, for example, I believe it's Lloyd's Bank, or maybe it's the whole banking system, has worked with Trevor Jarvis, a person with dementia, to do away with the PIN system, the PIN number system for everybody. Well, wouldn't that be great? But particularly for people with dementia, to make banking easier so that there aren't all these walls and barriers. So the way that I've thought about this for quite some time is that dementia does cause a number of disabilities. And in terms of creating a dementia-friendly community, except for in very specific areas where they've been working really hard at this, generally speaking, we are still at the stage where people who have physical disabilities and who might be limited to moving around in a wheelchair, where they're, you know how we have the ramps on the sidewalks, and you've got the buttons on the doors, and you've got, elevator buttons that are low down and wide doorways. Does anybody remember a world where we didn't have any of that? There were no ramps on the sidewalks. There were no wide doors. There were no wide hallways. There were no low buttons to open doors. There was none of that stuff. Well, that's kind of where we're still at with people with dementia, because we're starting to recognize that what specific disabilities are that are caused by the various forms of dementia. And we're starting to realize that maybe if somebody did have a button to open the door, they might actually be able to live a better quality of life. But they're still not entirely sure what those buttons and ramps and wide doorways for people with dementia are.
And it's really, again, it's really not at all with visual. People don't get it, and yet there's a lot of work being done in England around vision and lights, and I think we're going to need it big time, because I think a lot of our vision working on computers and everything it's not just going to be people with dementia.
Right.
Yeah,
Amy?
Oh, thanks. This is too much to type. I just want to share that the accommodation issue really hit home for me lately. I had to fly somewhere to speak, and one leg of the trip on the plane called for seats to be assigned at the gate. And what we tried, my husband and I, every which way, was to seek an accommodation because I needed to sit by my husband. I wasn't asking for anything special as far as early or certain seats, just that I have Alzheimer's and I needed to sit by my husband. And I received no help from major Delta carrier, just kind of a dead silence. So it was really weird, because I thought, wow, we're not at the point where ADA recognizes dementia?
Yeah, no, we're not. Unfortunately, we're not. There is widespread training is needed. The demand. Well, here we have from Feltec. I'm sorry, I'm just using your screen name. We've had great success in Wisconsin with dementia-friendly communities. I think I know what you're talking about. Businesses are very interested in getting their staff trained. In my hometown, we have a bank, restaurant, pharmacy, hardware store, and grocery store who are enthusiastic champions. And we have more demand than we can meet. So in educating the community about what it means to have the various disabilities caused by dementia, including the visual, to know that it's more than memory. Businesses say that they have been facing the challenges of serving people better and are looking for information and training. The hardware store staff have had to help people get back home. Just wanted to add, well, it's true. Well, gosh, it's great that you have staff in your town that are willing to help people go home to get home, and that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Allow people to function.
I went up to my eye doctor's, and it's steep stairs with a whole hall of people with eye doctors and stuff. And all the stairs coming down were all the same color and very hard for even somebody who has no problem with vision. They should have had some kind of color. And they didn't. And I'm going, this is an eye doctor's place. With eye doctors. They know they're going to have people coming up those stairs with eye issues. I was blown away.
With Sue, I'm going to speak on your behalf, but I had the pleasure of and the education of traveling with Sue to Puerto Rico from Toronto, flying. And Sue is an amazing traveler, but it's incredible the minor accommodations that could be made that would make life so much easier. And I remember, Sue, we went to a restaurant with the whole group in Puerto Rico.
Yep.
And the restaurant had some steps up. The steps weren't such an issue for you, but there was a big black mat at the bottom of the stairs, and you froze. Like the big black hole. So, okay, so get rid of the black mats. Is that so hard? Stuff
or
like
even
that.
put a red ring around it. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah. The red ring. That's right. I just wanted to say in response to the training, as you have seen here today, the people who have the disease are amazing resources in developing any kind of training for institutions, organizations, shops, banks, restaurants who serve people with dementia, which with the high percentage of people who are who are being diagnosed with some form of dementia is going to become a greater issue that needs to be addressed. And the people here today are really the best teachers and can develop those education programs. It's something that we would be focusing on. There's such a need, and there's such a need, and we're trying to focus as best as we can on what we think are the priorities, but certainly developing education programs, training for businesses, and I would also say the police force, and for social workers, and for doctors, for any service providers is really really important. Nothing about us without us. It is also it's something that we also say here to the members of Dementia Alliance International. So if you want to talk about creating education programs, if you want to partner with DAI, contact us. We have no funding. We're completely volunteer. So just keep that in mind. But I'll put in a little bit of a plug because, we totally agree that that education is needed. So I'll just, we're going to just kind of wrap up here in a couple of minutes. I had up here a minute ago the Dementia Alliance International vision. And it's a world where a person with dementia continues to be fully valued. Because really it comes down to it. I think before the money is put into the education, into enabling people with the disease to live well, we're going to have to get people to agree that a person with dementia continues to be fully valued after diagnosis. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever does. Margaret Mead. This is one thing that our members are committed to. So for people here with dementia who are interested in becoming a member of Dementia Alliance International, membership is exclusive to people with dementia. There's myself, who I'm kind of I hate to use the term executive director. I feel more like helper person. but I'm not a member. So there's members are only people with dementia, and our board is entirely made of people with dementia. All the members have dementia of one form or another. Family carers, professional service providers, researchers, and healthcare professionals are welcome to join our newsletter mailing list and support us through donations. And on here, you'll see our website. It's a mouthful, but if you just do a search for us, Dementia Alliance International, you will pull up our website. There's our Twitter handle. We have a very active Twitter feed. No, we're not missing an E off the end of Alliance. It's just that we ran out of characters. And there's our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook. And there's our email address. So just take that great big long URL and stick the word info@ in front of it, and you can email us with your questions. There's going to be another class next week on Wednesday. And if you haven't already registered, and the focus of class number 2 is my conversation with my doctor. And this is how to advocate for yourself at the doctor's office. Participating in this, the teachers at this class number 2 include 2 physicians who were diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So they have sat on both sides of the desk in the doctor's office. And also John Sandblum, who had quite an experience of being diagnosed as well. So he's well versed in how to speak with the doctor, how to understand, how you can create understanding between the two of you, and so that you can be heard. So I hope that you'll join us. You will receive an email from Dementia Alliance International in the next couple of days, and it will give you the link to the recording of this webinar, and also the link to register for the next class if you are interested in attending that one. We have a lot of events going on this month because it is World Dementia Awareness Month. So in addition to these weekly classes, we also have a webinar in the 3rd week of September. And the focus of that webinar is dispelling the myths of dementia. So it's your chance to ask questions of our panel, all of whom have dementia, to talk about what some of the myths are. And we will also have our regular memory cafe, Cafe Le Brain. So a very busy month. And I want to thank you very much for joining